Welcome, everybody, to Memorial Day live stream expert interview. Today, we have a great show. We have the one, the only Mr. Steve Burrows on the show. In today's discussion, we often discuss the minor part of a massive solution needed to achieve housing attainability and housing affordability. What is the desired lifespan of the product we are building? How are we providing access to food, water, shelter, and dare I say, happiness? How are we connecting our fragmented industry? Where's the innovation in building materials, automation, and building systems? And what are we solving for? At Dave Cooper Live, we are always bringing you the people and the processes that are building it better. Our guests and topics include experts in building systems to building science, building codes, and the tech used to build it better. We are always seeking out the best and the brightest in construction and discovering all of the ways that innovative buildings come to life. And we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. So please hit that like and share button right now. All right, so I'm not going to make you wait any longer. We're going to bring on Steve Burrows. Steve is a catalyst for Proptech innovation and change. He was made commander of the British Empire. He has hosted television documentaries. He might possibly be even more interesting than the Dos Equis most interesting man in the world, and I truly believe this. Let's welcome Steve to the show. Steve Burrows, what's happening?
Hey, good to meet you. So, great day, Memorial Day. Thank you.
More interesting than the Dos Equis, man. I love it, and I think that's going to prove to be true. So, and hey, we were talking before the show. We didn't even know it, but in your title, we put boxer up there, right on the thing, not knowing that you really were a boxer back in the day.
This is true. This is Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder, Vegas. Me and my two boys went to Vegas for that weekend. So yeah, I'm a boxing fan.
That is awesome. That is awesome. All right, Steve, before we jump into this, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or Jennifer will call your wife, which I know you don't want to happen. So go for it. You got 2 minutes.
I definitely don't want that to happen. But before I do that, I want to just do one little thing. I just want us to take a moment. Today is Memorial Day, and it would be wrong of us not to sort of take a moment to reflect on the people who've given us our freedoms, and also the people that we may have lost over this last year of pandemic. So I'd just like to take a moment. Thanks. So from the moment I was born, I was born in a hospital called Clatterbridge, which is in the UK. So I'm British, as you can hear, and lived most of my life in Ellesmere Port in the UK. Went to college to become an engineer. Engineer means ingenious. So that's my career. So I've had an ingenious career, doing a variety of things. I got interested in sport from a young age, and Manchester United supporter. So I designed stadiums for about 10 years, including the Bird's Nest Stadium for the Beijing Olympics, a World Cup stadium in Germany. Managed to live in some interesting places: Hong Kong, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, a variety of places. I've been in the US about 20 years. This is my fourth stint. I live in San Francisco, and I became I became an American citizen about 10 years ago, something like that. And yeah, that's my career.
I love it. You've converted to Americanism. I love it. I love it. Yeah. And hey, listen, I appreciate after your intro, I was going to do something with the Memorial Day. I love what you just did. That is awesome. And yes, to everybody that's taken time out of today, which is a day of reflection for those who gave all, some of my brothers in arms and others that are out there. It is a day of remembrance. Enjoy your family, enjoy your time, because it's great to be here, but we're here because of all those that have served before us. So I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, Mr. Steve, today's topic is an engineer is a solution trying to find a problem. An engineer is a solution trying to find a problem. You say this often. Tell us exactly what that means.
Yeah, I think so. So obviously, I listen to your show. I think you do a great job. Honestly, I mean,
Thank you.
I love the way that your passion for this, and I watch people whenever I can tune in. I tune in, and what I find myself asking is when somebody shows something that they're doing, whether it's offsite construction or new materials or whatever it might be, a software solution. I'm always saying to myself, well, what problem are you trying to solve? Because what I learned early in my career is, I had some really good mentors that I looked up to in my career, and they would always say to me, don't just jump to a solution. Make sure you really understand the problem that you're trying to solve. And I've come to the conclusion that right now, this moment in history is the greatest time in history to be in the construction industry. And I say that for a number of reasons. So if I just sort of frame why I feel that way, and then, hopefully we can move on to talk to some questions about it. So why is it the greatest time in history to be in the construction industry? So there's a few things. The world is undergoing urbanization. More and more people are moving to cities. That's a fact. As people move to cities, because they can't really, the land doesn't get any bigger, people are living higher and higher in the sky. So I've not seen any data, but I would guess that the average person in a city lives further away from the street today than they've done at any time in history. And so at some point, that ground plane, which was really the place where society functioned, we're actually moving further and further away from it. So that's one thing. Our cities are undergoing tremendous change. So they've got physical limits. So some of them is space, just land. But other things are, I'm often asking myself, like, what is the absolute limitation of water that allows, let's say, San Francisco? How big can San Francisco be before it runs out of water? Because there's only so much rain, there's only so much water being created. And, we know how we store it and the sort of losses that occur. So what is the physical limitation in terms of water, in terms of food, in terms of land? Because I feel that we're starting to approach those limits. Then our cities are going to change dramatically. Just think about autonomous vehicles and how they will change our cities when we don't need traffic lights or road signs or parking lots or anything anymore. What is going to happen to our cities when people take the space back? How is the infrastructure going to be changed to support it? And if all of that wasn't complicated enough, we've got climate change. So, I say that's COVID times 1,000, that we're going to have all of the water patterns that we've come to rely on are going to change. And so even if we look back in history and say, how much water has San Francisco got? I'm right here now in the middle of a 10-year drought. We didn't really have any rain this winter at all. And we saw last year was an incredible fire season. Now, yeah, they're weather events, but there's no doubt it's getting hotter. And so I think about all of these things, and then, really, what is the purpose of all of the work we do is for people. And so our end goal is to serve people. It's not to build offsite faster or in a better way than somebody who can build something on site. It's actually to provide something better for the people who use the spaces that we create. So I think when you take all of that into account and the fact that technology is coming along and disrupting our industry, it is, in my opinion, the greatest time in history to be in this business.
Yeah, there is so much change happening in this business. And Steve, I say it all the time. I mean, it's about time. We're in last place, and I beat it like it's, like no other thing that I beat before. It's just, we can't be in last place forever, right? Housing and happiness, affordability, attainability for people to live in housing should not be a crisis in this country or other countries. It should be attainable. So let's talk a little bit about, right, how do we get to that? There's Proptech out there. There's building materials out there. How do we get to where we can make the homes more affordable, where we can make them more attainable, and above and most all, provide housing that provides happiness to the occupants that go into it? Because this is what you're saying. It's about the people, not about what we can do.
Well, I don't want to not talk about money, but let's just put affordability to one side, right, at the moment. So, why do we build housing? Let's start with that question. So, an engineer is a solution looking for a problem. And the problem is why, the question we've got to ask ourselves, why do we build housing? So we build housing to give people shelter, right? And those people are different ages. They're from newly born until 90 years of age. People are living longer. So it's for a whole age spectrum. And then they have different reasons for having the housing. So they want to sleep. And to sleep, if we just think about sleep for a moment, we've got to create a space where it's environmentally suitable for sleeping. And that means we've got to deal with noise and we've got to deal with light, and that it's emotionally suitable for sleeping. So people have got to feel safe and they've got to feel happy, because you can't sleep when you're stressed, right? So the problem that we're trying to solve is, how do we create places for people to sleep? If we just think about bedrooms in homes, how do we create places where people can sleep and the light is right and the noise is okay and people feel safe and comfortable in the space? And we're creating bedrooms. I just think about, if Apple came to you and said, we've got a 2,000-year-old iPhone, you would go, well, that's crazy, right? Or if they said we got a 500-year or a 200-year iPhone, you'd think that was crazy, right? It's impossible. But the construction industry is still building with concrete that was created 2,000 years ago. And the construction industry is still building bedrooms that were the same arrangement of space that we did 200 years ago. We haven't actually evolved much the spaces that we create for people. And yet everything else has moved on. So I think we got to start looking at, how do we solve the root cause of the problem, and how do we create places that serve the people that go in them and make them feel safe and secure. But just to finish on this point, the other thing is, we don't create places, older people, we say empty nesters, sell their home and they move to cities. And then they lose their partner, right? And then they're lonely. We don't sort of address loneliness. These are the problems. We're building the built environment, right? Our job is to create spaces where we can solve problems of older people being lonely, right? And we can solve that problem if we focus on addressing it. We don't focus on schools. It's no good building housing, and then every time when people have children, they have to leave the cities and move to the suburbs because there are no schools. And we don't solve the idea of people living their life in an urban environment. It's got to be affordable, I agree, but also they've got to be capable of fulfilling all of the same functions that they can fulfill when they've been historically moving out to the suburbs. And I just think we're still thinking in an old-fashioned way. My house, could have been designed for my great-grandfather. It's just not the space that I would have created for myself. But it's what developers think I want because they look back in history. And I want us to start looking into the future and create the spaces that our grandchildren want to be in, and not the spaces that our grandparents created.
Yeah. So what do you think that space of the future looks like?
I think you've got to think about you've got to take the spaces and you've got to think about how you create the perfect environment. So, I was speaking at a Department of Energy conference around lighting, and I was their keynote speaker. I don't know why, because I don't know much about lighting, but they asked me to be their keynote speaker.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know what you guys are going to talk about, but I hope you're going to talk about the impact of lighting on sleep. And actually, I was right. They were talking about that. They know an awful lot about light spectrum, the sort of light that gets you in the right mood to get a good night's sleep. And so the lighting industry is designing light fixtures that allow people to get a good night's sleep. Your phone and your computers also now have a night mode that gets you in the mood for sleep. I think we've got to think about creating spaces that are acoustically correct for sleep. There are lighting. They've got, we put windows in bedrooms to the outside because people used to wake and go to sleep to the sun. But we don't do that now. People put blackout blinds and twin pane and triple pane glazing to try and keep the road noise out. We've got to create spaces that allow people to do the function that's intended for the space. And so I just think we're going to create spaces that are way more flexible. I look at, I go, why do walls have to stay, internal non-load bearing walls, why do they have to stay in the same place throughout the entire life of the space? They don't. How do we use the space that's inside those walls? We're building a whole bunch of square footage that we can't access. Why are we building with materials that are carbon intense, like cement-based materials? When cement, just to put it in context, if cement was a country, it would be the third largest CO2 producer in the world. Cement is our aviation fuel. And why are we using wet systems in buildings? And then why are we replicating on-site wet methods, stick-built methods in off-site construction? Why are we using the same materials? And there's good answers to those questions that relate to codes and building departments and cost and getting things done. But the construction industry's got to look to the future and not just do just enough to get past the building department. There are good, interesting things happening, like the European Commission's Bauhaus project, looking to change the codes and how they work in Europe to allow innovation to come into the construction industry. And we've got to be creating things for the future. We got to imagine we're in Star Trek, and we're imagining the future, and we're saying, how do we create that? And not looking back in the past and saying, how do we create a better version of that?
Let me be Spock from Star Trek here for a moment.
He is. Yeah.
But I don't have him, but I'll work on it. If I knew we were doing Star Trek, I would have done something. So Steve, let's go to building systems now, right? We had Blockable on just a couple days back, and their whole process is different materials, flexibility in homes to grow with your family. What do you see I guess there's a couple of things to unpack on all the things you said, but what do we need to do to make all of this happen? What's out there? Where are we going with this? Because I agree with you. Today's homes are not the homes that we needed back in the day, right? What people want are different. Lighting's a big thing. We've had a couple shows with people talking about lighting, light therapy, mood swings, how it adapts and affects your day-to-day moods and what you do. So there's a lot here, but does building systems play a role in this, and companies like what Boxable is doing?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, the way I look at it, if we just think about offsite, I mean, there's a number of parts to the revolution that's taking place in the construction industry. So if we just compartmentalize it just for a moment, the first part is integrating through software, right? So we're working on interoperability of different softwares, different software as a sort of a configurator solution for buildings that has got some capability of adapting to codes. Codes are just a rule set, so we can automate a lot of the things that the man hours that we put into creating buildings. Huge amounts of it can be automated, and that is happening. And then there's a whole movement around materials. So I like this idea that instead of melting rock to create buildings, what if we grew our buildings and we used things that we could actually grow and were actually beneficial to the planet instead of melting rock or extracting bauxite and putting huge amounts of energy into it? Are there solutions around materials? But then you're specifically talking about what I call processes, which is offsite construction, whether it's panelized, volumetric, elemental, doesn't really matter. So the common denominator is, let me take a step back in history for a moment. Westinghouse had a choice, right? They could choose to make a braking system or a signaling system for trains. And they chose to make a braking system. And why did they do that? Because the braking system has to be consistent between every piece of rolling stock on the line, but the signaling system can change from place to place. So the equivalent to that in the offsite construction industry are connectors. And what I like to think is that all of these elements, whether they're volumetric or panelized or elemental, need to be connected together to make a system. And we get some forces. Planet Earth gives us some forces free of charge. Planet Earth gives us gravity free of charge. So let's just talk about structure for a moment. If a panelized building system connected together and gravity was the applied force that made the connection, that would be the most efficient thing that you can do. And so right now I look at, companies like Blockable or, Factory OS, or, we could go on. You've had, Autoball. You look at all these companies. Yeah. And I think that the breakthrough technology, the breakthrough has to be a common connector technology that allows you to interface with these different offsite systems. And we still don't, we look at, if we were to talk to NASA and we said, hey, look, the biggest advance in the construction industry in the last 15 years has been PEX piping, they would laugh us out of the place. But we haven't really solved. We got some electrical connector solutions. We got some, plastic pipe connector solutions. But if we're going to design our buildings to last 200 years or more and be capable of being deconstructed and not go to landfill to be reused and go into reuse after their normal life, and to be maintainable without having to bash holes in walls. I mean, Ben Hur told me that, and he proved it, that this is how crazy the construction industry is. If you've got some drywall in your house and you knock a hole in the drywall, a 50-inch hole in the drywall, it's cheaper to buy a TV in Best Buy and hang it over the hole than it is to pay somebody to fix the hole.
Very true. Very true.
How can that make sense? Why are we building with materials that afterwards we have to smash them to pieces in order to maintain the things that are behind them? We've got to change that in the construction industry. Yeah,
and I'm gonna ask some more on this, but I have a NASA quote that I've been using from Jerry McCaughey that talks about astronauts, because they're some of the best offsite builders in the world, right? Exactly. Can you imagine? And I always say this, so for you people that have heard me, you've heard this 100 times already, but we don't need to have field verify on the plans anymore. Could you imagine going to the space shuttle to add your new part, and the astronauts get there and it says field verify? But you're right, the technology's out there, the places are out there. You mentioned building materials, right? Just even this morning, I was scrolling through my emails. They got an NAHB newsletter, and there's a company that is using bamboo to build their homes and structures with now. Sure. Can you elaborate a little bit more on when you mentioned let's build things out of things that we can grow? Give us some examples.
Well, I think that sort of, if you think about, let's just pick something that's current, right? So, we're getting legalization of cannabis, right, across the United States in a variety of states, and if you look at the plant, only a very small percentage of the plant is actually used. So they're looking really for the active ingredients as part of the plant. The vast amount of that plant is waste, and those farmers are currently, they have that waste sitting in the fields, either rotting, that goes to landfill. If they can burn it, they'll burn it. And it's just waste, right? We can convert that into hempcrete, right? We can convert that into a material that has a high thermal mass, low conductivity. It's a perfect insulated material. And it has a compressive strength of about 1 Newton per square millimeter. So it's not very strong, has no tensile value. But it has a very good use. It could be used as a radiant system in radiant floors. It could be used as continuous external insulation. It's got a variety of uses, and it's a waste product, right? It's a bio waste product. So, there's an example. Bamboo is another great example, but there are hundreds of these things. We grow and create waste all over the world all the time, and that waste has a value. We're happy to build with wood, and wood is just, at its simplest level, it's cellulose and lignin, and that means it's fiber and glue. That's what wood is. It's fiber and glue. And all of these plants, the best engineer on planet Earth is Mother Nature. And all of the things that she has done are available to us to use. We've spent our entire history of building buildings fighting Mother Nature, right? And maybe we should take a bit of a leaf out of termites because they build termite mounds. They don't need to melt any rock. They don't add any energy, and yet they can provide cool interior spaces that they can live in with natural materials. Now, we gotta take, if we've got technology that now allows us to do things that we could never do before. So it's time to change, and these things are available to us, and we just can't think in an old-fashioned way. This is a super exciting time to be in the industry.
It really is. It really is. So, all right, everybody, if you were just joining us, we got Steve Burrows on. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Steve, why are we live on Twitch?
We're on Twitch because there are people on Twitch that aren't like us. There are people who think Twitch is the latest technology and they want to be part of the latest thing. And if we want to attract the best and the brightest into our industry, we got to be where they are. So that's why we're on Twitch.
I love it. Absolutely. That's where the young folks are. And we need more young, great minds in this industry. They have been using digital technology a long, long time, and their gaming platforms are ripe for the construction industry to take advantage of. All right, everybody. And also, if you are not following Steve Burrows, please hit that like and share button. Then go follow Steve and hit that like and share button. There's a world of knowledge here, and I mean a world. All right, Steve, coming back to this. We talk about all this creative thinking. We talk about all the new materials we could be using. Are we teaching any of this in our schools? I feel like from my conversations with universities and professors, our young people are coming out of school behind the ball because they are not being taught the latest and greatest. What is your thoughts on this?
I do a lot of work with students. So, I made an IMAX movie called Dream Big. It's out now on Netflix. Anybody wants to watch it? If you've got kids, please, it's free. It's 40 minutes long, and it's about engineering, right? How we're engineering our world.
We'll put it in the comments. We'll look it up and put it in the comments for everybody.
Oh, it's great. And, and I did that really honestly to encourage the next generation of talent to focus on the construction industry, because I worry about that. I worry, are we attracting the best and the brightest? But I don't worry that the best and the brightest are out there. My problem with the construction industry sort of educational process is I don't think we're reaching out wide enough. So what I just said to you is, let's pick somewhere, Cal Poly. So Cal Poly has a great ag program, absolutely fantastic ag program. Does the ag program talk to the engineering program? No. Could they? So, what I'm saying is if you want to think about sleep, right, who is the best, which are the best disciplines in the college that know about humans and sleep, about human physiology? It's not the engineering department. What we need to be is more interdisciplinary. I think, one of our big problems is we think too narrow. So we think if you want to create a building for people, we don't need to know anything about people. We just need to know everything about the boxes that we're going to put them in. But that's not correct, right? We need more multidisciplinary programs in the colleges where we can bring biologists and material scientists and psychologists into the construction industry to create better spaces for people. So I don't think it's an education problem, because the kids I see are whip smart. I got two college educated boys, and they knew more than me before they went to college. They knew a lot more than me when they graduated. So we don't need to educate people anymore or change how they're educated. We need to expose them to different things. And it's back to my opening point, right? I'm a solution, right? I'm a solution looking for a problem. So define the problem. And then say, okay, apart from engineering, who else do I need in the space? Who else do I need to input to what I create? And when you think that way, it will be a different. The people who'll sit around the future design table for buildings will not be the same people that sat around the design table 40 years ago. And if we are doing it with the people who, experience people from the construction industry and no one else, then you're missing a trick.
Well, that's it. We got to stop talking to ourselves, right? We're really good at that, and we need to collaborate. And if I understood you correctly, it's not that we need to teach more. we need also more collaboration between the different departments in the universities, so they come together talking about lighting and sleep labs, the electrical engineers, the regular engineers, drafting. And I would even take it a step further, because I've been seeing it with some of the universities, and that's getting out to the trade schools and the high schools, because recently a high school on a system built product came up with a new panel system that beat out all the higher education schools for the best product. Sure. I think that's amazing, right?
And we're starting to do it. When people are looking at things like, let's say, 3D printing, or, the place of robots, either on or off site, they're not reaching out to structural engineers or mechanical engineers from the construction industry. They're reaching out to people that come from different backgrounds. So they realize, when we're looking at manufacturing, some people are looking at the automotive industry and saying that's the future of construction manufacturing. I don't subscribe to that myself, but there are people who are doing that. So they're looking at different places. They're saying, right, hey, the construction industry is not where the best manufacturing knowledge lies. It's not where the best robotics knowledge lies. It's probably not where the best materials knowledge lies. So I've got to bring other people in. So it's being done because they have to. What I'm suggesting is we should do it because it makes sense. Not just because we're forced to do it, because we'll look outside the industry if we've got, no one else. I want the best in the world to be part of the construction industry, not just the best in the construction industry, because we are not the pinnacle of knowledge on planet Earth. That's for sure.
It's the automotive industry is often looked at as similar or very similar in some people's eyes to our industry. You have a different take on that. You want to share your take on why we shouldn't be looking at the automobile industry for our solutions?
Yeah, well, I look at it. I say the automotive industry it basically creates a standard product. A car. It works in every environment. Doesn't matter what the climate is. Doesn't matter whether it's seismic or hurricane. So it's a standard product made with custom parts. Right, that is a car. So all the car parts for a car are custom made for the car, and the car is a standard product. That is exactly the opposite of the construction industry, which is a custom part made for a place because of zoning, building department, environmental conditions, earthquakes or hurricanes or snow or climate differences. So it's a custom product made with standard parts. So they all have 2x4s, but it's custom. So it's exactly the opposite. So I find myself saying, why would you use a process that was designed for exactly the opposite to the construction industry and see it as the way that the construction industry should go? I don't subscribe to that, because fundamentally, they're solving a different problem. So it's back to, I know I keep harping on this, is like, well, what problem are you trying to solve? And why is the automotive industry the answer? It is not the answer. The reality is, we are in an industry where even if you build a factory to make buildings, the problem in the construction industry is we all know it's boom bust, right? We're at the moment we're in the middle of a housing boom. But if I said to you, what will demand for housing look like in 10 years' time? Neither of us know. We could have a guess. Neither of us really know. And so when you're in a boom bust industry, why create a process that relies on a factory working 16 hours a day, 6 days a week? What you've got to do is you've got to find a way to be much more flexible with that. And there isn't one. The construction industry is never going to, I was frustrated for years saying, why can't we have a standard grid for buildings and protocols for parts of pieces of buildings? Wouldn't it say, why aren't all windows the same size? Just like go, it's crazy. But after 40 years of banging my head on a wall, all I got was a headache. And so you go, okay, I just got to live with the fact that the construction industry, can't change everything.
Right.
So how do we serve this industry that is going to create custom products? And how do we do it in a way that takes significant amount of cost out? If there are offsite manufacturers on this call today, I would say, please show us your cost data of why you're cheaper than on-site construction, right? Because we need to drive the cost of housing down. We're only going to have minimum wage workers living in our cities and their children going to schools if we can significantly drive down the cost of housing. And I don't think we're going to do that the way we're going at the moment with the offsite industry. I don't think it's going to make big enough strides.
All right. So you say process, I say building systems. This is something that we talk a lot about on this show. Is there a difference in defining the efficiency? So if you're out there, I agree with you, Steve. How are you calculating the cost in the pro formas? What is the life cycles that we are looking at? What's your thoughts on those, Steve? And is there a difference between process and building systems?
Yeah, I think in my view, the only way we're going to make a significant cost difference in the construction industry is not going to be by just focusing on the first cost, the cost of creating the product. I think we've got to look at the total cost of ownership of a building. And when we get to a point where carbon pricing is $100 a ton or something, which I think will come, we've got to look at the whole life. That will stop us putting buildings into landfill. We've got to look at the total life cost of a building. And the biggest problem is going to be that right now, we look at buildings that they're constructed and then they're operated and maintained. I think that if we could design a building that was last 200 years and its construction never ended, it was not a hard finish handover and then it's operated. You could change it. You could add a bedroom onto the building. You could change the space inside the building. It's constantly under some form of construction. If we could think about it differently and own and operate those buildings differently on the total cost of ownership, we could make some significant cost savings over the life of our buildings. We could make them last 4 or 5 times longer, and we could avoid the waste going to landfill at the end of the useful life of the building. And the problem there is money doesn't have enough patience. So people are looking for returns, developers are looking for returns in the 3 to 4 year time range. Investors are looking for returns in the 10 to 20 year time range. Nobody is interested in money over 200 years, right? Nobody is interested in it. So what are we going to do about that? Because unless we can get slower money into the construction industry, we're constantly going to be feeding this habit that we've got, of quick fix solutions and high rates of early return. That is a sort of, counterculture to what we create. Nobody creates a car to last 200 years. Nobody creates a car to last 50 years. People create cars to last 10 years. It's a disposable society. My phone, I've got the 12, right? I had the 7. I don't know how long it lasted, 3 years, and I needed a new phone. But compare that to a building where presently, in the US, maybe we design for 40 or 50 years. I'd be interested to know from people who are on the call, how long do you think we design buildings to last in the United States of America? In Europe, it's like 50 or 60 years.
Yeah.
What do we do? What would it take to make a building last 200 years?
That's a great question for the audience. Why don't we put that out there? So let's get some comments on there. If you're watching this, you're in the building world, or a consumer watching our show today, how long should our buildings last that we're building? That's a great question. Let's put it out there. Hey, Steve, why don't we go to some shout outs and see who is in the audience, and let us know where you are joining us from today. And also, hey, if you're out there, let us know what you're doing on Memorial Day. We'd love to hear from you. All right, Jennifer, let's see who we got. Steve Adelman, CPA, good morning from Dallas, Texas. Hey, Steve, thanks for joining us today. Matt McCullen, Steve, great to see you and glad that you're being productive on Memorial Day. He is being productive, right?
Hey, Matt, nice to see you online.
Good to see you, Matt. Thank you. Peter Molinar, good afternoon from Toronto, Ontario. Love it. All right. Peter also has another comment. Making a home purchase affordable necessitates the removal of commissions for house sales and replacing it with a fixed or flat rate. There's a comment, huh?
Yeah, I think the whole money thing is, the revolution. My youngest son works in digital finance, and I look at what he's doing, and the revolution of finance has not come to the construction industry. We're still financing projects in the same way that we did 50 or 60 years ago. And we're not talking about innovation in finance as much as we should. And so, I'd like to see, we still build products that, if you're an architect, you submit your invoice and you wait 90 days to get paid. If you're a builder, you actually, have a big cash flow negative situation until it's in place and then you get paid. If you're an off-site manufacturer, somebody's got to pay for their building while it isn't on their site. And so we have a cash flow problem in the construction industry, and we've got to find a way to better match cash to expenditure. And digital platforms are doing that in many other industries. Very slow to come to the construction industry.
In simple terms, it's funny. We had dinner last week with a modular person who was in modular sales. And with everything going on, the factories are all backed up. And we were talking about how the structure, the pay and the commission's all set up. And believe it or not, he gets paid when the house is delivered, which is common in this industry. Well, guess what? The factories are out a year.
Yeah.
How do you manage even something like that, right? That's the cash flow issue, because the builder doesn't want to pay until they get paid. And that's the cyclical problem that you're talking about.
Yeah. We got big, and it's big money.
Yeah.
Big money. Yeah.
All right, we got Gilbert Meyer. Love Steve's approach. See need to leave our century-old building technology behind us. Gilbert's out of Honduras, so.
I agree. I couldn't agree more, Gilbert. So I appreciate the support. My fan club's pretty light on members, so feel free to join.
You can count them all in one hand.
Yeah, less than one hand.
Less than one hand. Oh, that's perfect. All right, Gilbert says this is the approach we are taking: fewer standardized components suitable for mass production and a connection system which eliminates 96% of fasteners.
Go, man. I'm with you. Good ideas.
Yeah. So that's MMC3. So check them out. They're doing some pretty cool stuff. All right, George Ryman in the house. I have always championed the fact that construction is not targeting potential new members correctly. This is important for the future of our industry. Good to see you, George. Thank you.
I'm a big George Ryman fan, so yeah, good on you, George.
George in the house, perfect. Well, see, there you go. That's one of your fingers, right?
There you go. I'm his fan.
Boy. Look who it is.
Oh no,
one, the only, the Joe Hutchins. Question: do you believe that we are so focused on methodologies of construction and standardization for mass production that we are missing this opportunity of place making?
Oh, completely agree. I got to say, I tried to stay off the subject of infrastructure, but it drives me crazy that cities, that we still look at a site and we say, we got a piece of land and it's got a boundary and it's the back of the sidewalk and we're going to build on that piece of land. And we're going to, everything else, we're going to bring stuff in like energy and water and stuff, and we're going to throw waste out. And we look at our cities as little patches of site around the entire city, and we don't think about the whole human experience. So I just want to give you a couple of examples. Kids who are born and grown up in cities most often have never seen the stars because of light pollution. I mean, I could cry. I swear I could. Imagine living a life where you can't see the stars, right? They never leave the cities, and we pollute the sky so badly with light that they can't see the stars. And I saw a study that was done in Chicago schools of kids who had been brought up in the cities, and they didn't know how big a sheep was or a cow was because they'd never seen one. We're losing this connection to nature. We're not creating places that people want to be in. We're creating places that just maximize the use of land value. And placemaking is huge. And, I didn't even know, 10 years ago, I didn't even know what it was. And now I think it's one of the most important things that apply in our industry. So couldn't agree more with Joel.
Joel, thanks for that question. All right, next. Is that all we got? Can't be. All right, well, that's pulling up. I see we're working through some more. Let's get back into Steve with how long should our homes last?
I think our homes should be flexible enough. So what we're talking about is creating buildings, creating boxes. I mean, we're the only creatures on this earth that build boxes for ourselves to live in, right? So all the other animals create something. Birds create nests, They're sort of unique, and they use things that come to them for free. But for some reason, we haven't figured out how to use the things that come to us for free. So we build these boxes, and these boxes are fixed. So I build a box for you, Dave, and you've got to stay inside that box. You can't do much about it. You can make a couple of little additions, punch your kitchen out, or make a bigger hole in the wall or something. But pretty well, you can't change that box. We got to create spaces that are more flexible, and when they're more flexible, they're more adaptable, because we do not know what the future holds. Right? We do not know what the future looks like, and we have to make spaces that are capable of being adapted into a future that we don't know. So I think if we do that, our building should be able to last 200 years. That's what I think. I think 200 years is long enough that we can believe we can do it, but it makes us think differently about how we actually do it.
Yeah, for sure. And you can see Sesha Guru Rao, I think is how you say it. I apologize, I messed it up. Joining from India. I believe if buildings become recustomizable, they can live for more than 100 years. So that comment was
in India. I actually I had the privilege of knowing Dr. Prem Jan in India, who started the Indian Green Building Council, and he once talked to me about the fact that India has been building sustainable buildings for about 4,000 years. They've been building buildings that they catch the wind, and they use buoyancy to ventilate themselves. And so when I was talking about green buildings coming to India, he said, "I'm going to correct you there. We've been doing this for 4,000 years. We know more about green buildings than anybody on planet Earth." And he gave me a good lesson in not assuming things. So India is a good place to look back in history and see what's possible.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, we got our glitch fix. Michael Kirshner, great point about planned obsolescence in construction. It's a problem across so many industries. How do we incentivize the opposite? I am in the Steve Burrows fan club. Two fingers. You're going to get your hand back, Steve, I think.
Yeah, but you got to remember, Mike Kirshner is one of those guys who has been innovating in the industry, not just around the process, making the process really efficient. So, he's been one of those people who does not accept that how it was done in the past is how it could be done in the future. So I'm also in the Mike Kirshner fan club. But I agree with him totally on planned obsolescence, that we make things that, 35% of all construction product ends up in landfill. We should be ashamed of ourselves. I mean, we got to stop and think about that for a moment. That everything we build, over a third of it ends up just being plowed into the ground. I mean, that is crazy. So we got to find a way to make things reusable. And that means these connectors, we got to be not just to make the connection, but to be able to take it apart again and do something with it. Like, imagine a bathroom pod. Why build a bathroom pod as a volumetric element that gets used only once?
Right.
I mean, what's the point of making something that you can transport 500 miles once? It's crazy. Yet the bathroom's only going to last 15 years. So why not make it? Why not be able to unplug it and use it in another building and make it last 200 years? So that means you got to plug and unplug it 13 times, if our math's right. So how do we do that?
Yeah, for sure. I don't have an answer for you, but I'm going to work on it right now. AJ says, we want longevity for our buildings, but do we want them to last 200 years? ? Judging from the rapid changes in how we live, it is hard to predict what society will look like 20 years in the future.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And I say that if you can make them flexible and adaptable, we see people, we're all in awe when somebody takes an old building and jacks it up and moves it across the city to another site, right? I'm advocating a small version of that actually when the building becomes obsolescent, let's say we build a 5-story building on a site, and then eventually we say, right, we want a 25-story building on the site. I want to be able to take the 5-story building down and put it somewhere else. So that's what I mean about not designing it to say, well, let's just demolish it, put it in the landfill, and build a 20-story building. That space has value, and there are people who would happily live in that space. Yeah, it may need some renovation, but Let's build it somewhere else. So let's make it constructible, deconstructible, movable, whether it's in panelized or volumetric. Let's just keep it in use. And so 200 years on the same site, I didn't say that. But 200 years in use, absolutely. I think it's possible.
You know, we just had a conversation not too long ago with a developer who has designed a commercial building that's on a land lease, and they designed it with using modular volumetric, where the top floor, when they deconstruct it, can become the first floor when they move it. So they take it out and sequence and set it at the same time, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And it does make sense. We're using bath pods. You can pull it out, you could update it, and then go put it in somewhere else if you want. And
why not?
I mean, it makes a ton of sense. And for developers out there, to me, it just boggles my mind that they're okay with, you know, throwing away so much of the product they're buying. Think about it.
It doesn't make sense to me to use materials that, you know, if you're going to make a bathroom pod, for example, and transport it 500 miles down US freeways that, just by the way, they're not in very good condition, as you'll know from your travels across the US, Dave. So if you're going to do that, why use brittle materials? I mean, why? You know, you wouldn't build it with those materials. If somebody said, let's make a car out of drywall and see how long it lasts, you wouldn't have a very good outcome, right? We know that. We would have a problem with the bouncing it down the road, and we'd have a problem with the water. Yet we do that with our pieces of buildings. We're still using the same materials that we build on site, stick built. I mean, you know, 8x4 sheets are 4 feet wide because that's how wide people's arms are when they pick up the sheets, right? 2x4s fit in your hand. The size of a brick was designed to fit in your hand. Why when we're using robots, and why when we're transporting pieces of building, do we use the same materials and sizes that were designed for humans to build by hand on a construction site? It doesn't make sense. What problem are we solving? You know, we have different, we're not solving the right problem just automatically using the same materials. These materials are often cut down to 4 feet wide, right? Because that's how people use them on site. They don't make them 4 feet wide. They cut them to 4 feet wide. Why are we doing that? Why are we following the same model? And I think we've got to stop all the time and ask ourselves, is this really the right way to do this?
Let me, as an engineer, not for today's show, but I want to ask you this just to pose the question. Let's say they did build sheets of OSB plywood, whatever the case is, hemp plywood, 20 by 30. Yeah. And you use that on your structure. Does that mean you need less interior wall structure, like every 16 on center, every 24 on center? Is there a value engineering to some of these systems? You know, obviously making them larger because they can be handled by machines to reduce the cost of material that we're actually using, reduce the shear wall calculations, all of those different things. So not for today's show, but somebody out there, I think it'd be a fun conversation to have. Does it make a difference?
Well, it does actually, just to answer that question. So there's a thing that you know, engineers refer to, which is called the utilization of the material. So, you know, basically if you use a piece of 2x4 in bending, you're only using the top and the bottom inch of that 2x4. The 2 inches in the middle, so half the material, is mostly not being used. Now, you know, people will say, well, what about when it's in compression, and what about shear at the ends? I'm talking just about in bending. So what we've got is there we've got a 50% utilization-ish. And we use our materials in our buildings have fairly low utilization. So you are right. If we change the shape of how we do things, and we change the sizes of how we do things, there will be less connections, and there could be a higher utilization of material. And the cost of a building is material, labor, and logistics, right? That's what adds up to the cost. And so, you know, we're doing a lot of offsite construction to try and deal with, you know, basically we've got a labor arbitrage. That's a labor arbitrage type solution. Can we build in a factory and build less on site? And can we have more productivity in the factory, which pays for the cost of the overhead of the factory? Labor arbitrage solution. We've got to solve the material solution, both in types of materials and utilization of materials. And then we've got to solve the logistics problem, which is in the sizes of the parts and the pieces that we create for buildings. So shipbuilding has had a massive increase in productivity because they now build huge parts of ships in a factory, and then the actual building on the site It's just these very large pieces being put together.
That's right.
And why can't we build buildings like that? Why can't we build a 25,000 square feet piece of building in a factory and move it at 3 o'clock in the morning into the city and crane it up into place overnight?
Yeah.
Why do we still have to do everything on the site? And it doesn't work every time, right. But why do we constantly use the same methods?
If anybody would like an example of that, just YouTube cruise ship construction. The whole thing is built in basically pods. And so just YouTube that, it'll make a lot of sense to you. So
yeah.
Would you consider a bathroom pod an extension of modular construction, or is the evolution of building materials actually creating products as another item in our building material provider could actually provide? So is a bathroom pod, is that volumetric? Is it a product? What is a bathroom pod, or is it just an extension?
A bathroom pod is volumetric, and a bathroom pod makes sense because it's a very small space, and you've got to get a lot of trades. Some of them that have to go through that very small space at least twice. So there's a first fix and a final fix at least for each of the parts. And so labor efficiency, if you look at all of the studies that have been done on construction labor efficiency, the least efficient part of the construction industry is the place where you get multi-trades in small spaces. And so that's why it's a good place to go. Other very low efficiency place is drywall finishing. And so that's why you get companies like Canvas that will do robotic drywall finishing and can make big labor savings and be cost competitive because it's a very inefficient process. Yeah. So, I think that's a good place to start, because this labor arbitrage problem, using technology to reduce the amount of labor, you're dealing with highly inefficient labor that's also constrained. There isn't as much of that labor around. We're not teaching kids. There's not as many apprenticeship programs. We're not bringing through the tradesmen in the volume that we need for the construction industry. So, you can be pretty secure with the future because you're going to be in demand. So I like bathroom pods, and I think they're a volumetric solution. I like drywall robotic finishing. I do question why we're using drywall in the first place, but if we are, and then we're going to put wet stuff all over it and try and make it flat and make the joints not crack, then why not use a robot instead of a human? It sort of makes sense to me, even if the material itself doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah, for sure. And we can definitely use robots for that. All right, listen, Steve, we are at our hour. We're going to go back to some more comments and questions just because people are spending their day with us. So Andrew Seeley in the house: flexible scale, relocatable, much longer useful lives, new and better materials, systematic connectors, easy to refurbish or refit. If we aren't improving these items in a build, what improvements are we bringing? Love it. Thanks, Andrew.
Good question. I mean, that's really my point. We're not improving those things at the rate. This is the greatest time in history to be in this industry. We're being asked to go to Mars, right? We're in that same room in the late 1970s when the Voyager was going to Mars, and we're being asked to revolutionize the construction industry. And if we're not thinking big and different, what's the point? What is the point?
Yeah, for sure. I agree. All right. Matt McCollin, boy, people got a lot to say. I think we built your hand back. Steve, agreed with your cash flow problem with AEC, but shouldn't we go deeper? Isn't it not only a real estate problem, but really a financing access to capital issue? The way to attack the issue is to work with those who control the money flow and create the metrics that don't relate to ROI, IRR, and MIRR.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Matt knows, because we've actually talked about this ourselves, that I completely agree with that. I think we've got to find a way to, right now we still organize the construction industry largely. We got some vertically integrated companies, but we still organize the construction industry largely around, money players, people who are just in the industry to make money out of buildings. They don't really, they're not too bothered about how the buildings perform after they've been constructed. And we've got people who organize themselves into things that we call architects and engineers and contractors and subcontractors, etc. And we sort of haven't solved the sort of fundamental problem that we need the money alongside the team every step of the way. And that if we start thinking about buildings less as a short-term benefit and more as a long-term problem. That these cities, if you in the life of a city, if somebody said, I'm going to design San Francisco to last 200 years, somebody would say, well, that's not very long for a city. Yet San Francisco is just a collection of buildings, right? That's all that makes that city, and any city. So we've got to start thinking about the long-term impact of the places we create, because humans are going to be on this earth a lot longer than 200 years. And we are creating the place where humans can be humans. That is us. It's no one else, not the bankers or anyone else. It is us. And so the future generations, our great grandchildren, are either going to be proud of us or ashamed of us. And I'm trying pretty hard that they might be proud of me and not ashamed of me. But right now, if I do what I did the last 30 years, I don't think they're going to be. They're going to look back on me with a smiley face.
Yeah, well, I would disagree with that. I'll be your big thumb, right, or your big toe, whatever you want. But you've accomplished a lot. I mean, if you think about just the few things that we've mentioned, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So don't be so hard on yourself, Steve. All right, I think we have a long way to go to make it better for sure.
We do.
All right. Last comment here. Tom Reddy, development of supplies with transportation in mind.
Yeah. I think we've got to figure out. I think this process of designing parts and pieces of buildings that are made to fit on trucks. We sort of a lot of offsite construction is governed by transportation issues, and a lot of damage in transport is coming from the materials that we use. I think that needs a complete rethink about even where we site our factories relative to the places that we're going to build the buildings. Yeah. It seems to me that we're doing it a bit backwards at the moment. I would sort of advocate things like, as we go to autonomous vehicles, there's always a big question around what are we going to do with all these parking lots? And so, why aren't they city factories for buildings so that we can move things shorter distances throughout the city, and we take the factory to the city instead of the factory product transported down the roads into the cities? Maybe that's not a good idea, but I like some of the there's a company called Umbrella who are trying to make the building construction site a factory. I like some of these ideas. I just don't think we just found the right solution right now. But we definitely got to think differently about transportation materials and methods.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know what? A lot of these parking lots are attached to big malls, and they have an infrastructure already in place with wiring, plumbing, electrical, things that one would actually need. So some of it does make sense and is a good reuse for that space. Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time on the show and sharing with us, the conversation on Proptech, software solutions, building solutions. We talked about robotics, automation, modern methods of construction, building systems. But the one thing we didn't talk about is, what is your one thing? We're going to part this show today. What is your one thing? Steve, let us know.
Yeah, my one thing is that I do say to people when I talk to students who are coming into the construction industry, I said it's just not about money. We're very lucky. I'm pretty sure every single person who's logged into this show today is going to die with money in the bank. And my dad used to say, it's no point being the richest person in the cemetery. It's about the impact that you have on the world. So what I would ask everybody, and what I try to do, is be the best version of you that you can possibly be. I try to do that. And when you think that way, ask yourself the question, is this the best that I can do? And if the answer is no, then get some more people involved and do something better. It's a team sport. We're so lucky to be in this industry. And, I thank my lucky stars every single day. So be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be.
Yeah, I love it. There you have it, everybody. Steve Burrows on Memorial Day. And I hope everybody out there is reflecting for those who gave some, and especially those who gave all. This is what it's all about today, and enjoying your family, because that's why we're all here today, and enjoying Steve Burrows. And we're glad you rebuilt his hand. All of these things come together. Awesome. Steve, you're a heck of a fighter, man. I love it. Man. I love it. All right, everybody, listen, that's a wrap for today. We will not be live on Wednesday. We have a travel day, but you will find us on Friday, BS Friday, with Mark, Bare Naked Willie, and I. And we will be continuing our conversation on building science. And Steve, Until next time, I really appreciate you. Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful, wonderful holiday weekend. Enjoy the pool, swimming, whatever it is you're going to do.
That's what I'm going to be doing.
Hang tight right there. I'll come back to you after the outro. And everybody else out there, have a wonderful Memorial Day. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Take care. Bye.